She came to study the stars. Now she remembers being one of them. Welcome to Merrow, where the sky never forgets. Part 1. The coordinates no one sent. You don't expect the stars to whisper. But on the night it started, the signal didn't arrive with thunder or flashing lights. It came quietly, buried in the background noise of space. A murmur stitched into the static, repeating itself like a forgotten prayer. Elian Rhodes was used to anomalies. As an astrophysicist at Ridgemont University, she lived in patterns, watched the sky for disruptions. But this one didn't fit any model. It wasn't a gamma burst, not solar flares, not a pulsar. It was too deliberate. The coordinates were encoded in a spiral pattern, rotating slowly, repeating just two things: a set of GPS coordinates and a date. That date was 2 weeks from the day she received the signal. She checked the location. Merrow, Nevada. A town she'd never heard of. A town the university's maps didn't even show. But she found it, deep in the Nevada desert, past ghost roads and forgotten signage. A single rust-colored dot on an old geological survey map from the 80s. Population unknown. She drove alone early in the morning. By the time she hit the last marked town, her GPS began to stutter. Her phone lost all bars. Her car radio turned to static, except for the moment when it crackled and repeated the same coordinates back to her. The voice sounded familiar. The highway stretched into silence. The desert around her shimmered in the heat. Then the landscape began to change, the sky especially. The blue deepened, almost too rich, like velvet soaked in ink. And then, the stars. They weren't twinkling. They were holding still, suspended, watching, and they were wrong. She couldn't describe it, only that they were in the wrong places. Constellations she knew by heart were bent out of shape, shifted, tilted, as if someone had grabbed the sky like a canvas and twisted it from the inside. Elian gripped the steering wheel, drove slower. Ahead, a rusted sign emerged from a crooked pole. Welcome to Merrow Elevation, 31 on 24. We never lost our way, no population number. No slogan, just that strange phrase. She passed the sign, and her stomach turned. Not from the road, it was flat, but from a pressure in the air. Like walking through someone else's breath. The town wasn't abandoned. That was the first wrong thing. She expected ruins, a ghost town, but instead Merrow looked maintained. Dusty, yes, but intact. Buildings with fresh paint, gas station signs glowing softly in the heat haze, a diner with a flickering neon open sign, and people moving, living, watching. She parked in front of a tiny gas station and stepped out. The heat was unreal, dry and crushing, but inside the gas station it was colder than it should have been. The overhead lights buzzed. A fan turned without moving the air. The clerk behind the counter didn't look up. Then he did, and smiled, like he knew her. Elian, he said, not asking Bino, but confirming. You finally came back. She froze. I think you have me confused with someone else, she said carefully. He chuckled. Not mean, not mocking, just tired. Nah. Been a while, though. Ever since the observatory shut down, you've been out of sight. I'm sorry, what observatory? He pointed north, up on Parallax Hill. You don't remember? His smile faltered. Huh. Thought maybe you would. She stepped back. I think you're mistaken. I've never been here before. That pause, that look, like he didn't believe her, or worse, he did. And that was the problem. Outside, the wind picked up, only there weren't any trees to rustle, no leaves to stir. The wind felt hollow, like it moved through something unseen. She turned to go, but the clerk called after her. You should check the old observatory. Might jog your memory. She didn't respond. Back in the car, her phone was completely dead. Not just out of service. The screen wouldn't turn on at all. Even the dash clock in her car blinked. 0, 0. She drove toward the hill the clerk pointed to. Parallax Hill. The name echoed in her mind, like something she'd heard in a dream. The road curved up gently, lined with Joshua trees and scrub that seemed not quite real. Their shadows stretched the wrong way. The horizon felt too close, like it pressed against her windshield. At the top of the hill, the observatory waited, cracked dome, rusted metal. The telescope mounted inside still pointed skyward, unmoving, waiting, watching. She stepped inside. The air was wrong again. Not stale, too clean, sanitized, smelling faintly. Of ozone on the wall graffiti. Or not graffiti, notes. Dozens of handwritten notes, all signed ER. She picked one at random. The stars haven't stopped moving. They just don't move for you. Another. Time bends easier in circles. Merrow is the center, and then the worst one, the one that stopped her heart. The only way out is to go deeper in. Suddenly, the wind outside went silent, and the stars began to spiral again. Right there, through the observatory dome, she saw it. The sky spinning, folding into itself. Every star dragged into a spiraling whirlpool of light just above Merrow. It shouldn't have been visible. Not in daylight, but in Merrow it was always visible. She stumbled back, heart racing. A hum began to rise. From the dome, the ground, her chest, and then footsteps behind her. She turned. No one was there. Only the sound of a voice and her own when whispering, "Welcome back, Dr. Rhodes." Part 2. The town that forgot the sky. The next morning, Elian stood outside her motel, staring at a sky that didn't make sense. It was 6:12 a.m., according to her wristwatch. The sun had risen, but not completely. A strange half-light blanketed Merrow, like the world was stuck between frames and the stars were still visible. She tilted her head back. They hadn't moved, or rather, they had, just not in the way they should have. The Big Dipper was no longer a dipper. Orion's belt was snapped in two. Every constellation she'd ever known was wrong, subtly rearranged, tilted, as if someone were gently nudging them each night into new positions, into a spiral. She blinked and rubbed her eyes, thinking it was an afterimage or lack of sleep. But when she opened them again, the stars still spun in that slow, deliberate curl, like galaxies draining into a sinkhole of gravity just above Merrow. She didn't remember walking to the diner, but she was there, sitting inside, coffee cooling in front of her. The waitress poured without asking. "You always liked it black?" she said. Elian looked up. "Do you know me?" The woman shrugged. "Everyone here knows you. Some better than others." The bell above the diner door jingled. A teenage girl entered, red flannel, sharp eyes, dirt under her nails. She walked straight to Elian's booth and slid a notebook across the table. "You dropped this," she said. I don't think this is mine." The girl didn't blink. "You're Elian Rhodes, it's yours." Elian picked it up slowly. The cover was cracked leather, worn along the spine. Inside, star charts, dozens of them. Each page carefully labeled, marked with coordinates, angles, declinations. They were drawn in her own handwriting. Identical, meticulous, the way she'd drawn charts in grad school. She flipped through, faster now, heart racing. Page 17. The stars in a lopsided wheel. Page 24. A dense cluster labeled inversion point. Page 37. Her breath caught. There, written in dark blue ink, were the words, Day 37, Spiral. Reaches apex. She hadn't written it, she knew she hadn't, but the ink was hers. The curve of each letter, the way she crossed her T's with a sharp flick, all unmistakably hers. She turned to ask the girl a question, but she was gone. No door opened. No bell rang. The booth was empty. Elian stood abruptly, knocking her coffee over. No one in the diner reacted. The waitress simply wiped her hands and turned her back. Elian stepped outside into heatless sunlight and stared up again. The spiral had tightened. She was sure of it. She walked the streets for hours. No cell signal, no clocks, no birds. Every house looked lived in. Curtains drawn, lawns tended. But no one was outside except the people at the diner and the gas station. As the day dragged on, the light never changed. Merrow was frozen at the edge of morning. That night, she stayed awake in the motel. She set up her camera on a tripod, facing the sky, and pointed another toward the door just in case. She waited. 8 a.m., 4, 11 a.m., 4:44 a.m. A hum started, not mechanical, not electrical, biological, like a throat clearing miles away, or the sky thinking. She got up to check the window. The stars were dancing now, almost imperceptibly, flickering in and out of position, each blink forming a tighter spiral. The notebook lay on the desk. She opened it again. Page 44 now had new ink, fresh, still damp. It said, "Don't look at her directly. She remembers too much." She didn't know what it meant, but she knew who wrote it. She had, somehow, sometime. She turned back toward the tripod camera, but it was facing the wrong way. It was now pointed at the bed. She hadn't moved it. And on the bed, her boots, covered in dust, and a single matchbook from the diner. She hadn't gone back there that evening. She was sure. She checked. The footage, but her hard drive showed an error. Playback failed. File already in use. Confused, she pulled the curtains aside and froze. Across the street, on top of the diner roof, a figure stood under the star spiral. She could just make out the outline. Slim, hair pulled back, jacket, boots. It was her. Standing, still, watching the sky. She bolted for the door, ran outside, but the rooftop was empty, and when she turned back to her motel window, the curtains were closed, but she'd left them open. A chill crept down her spine. She checked the dirt by the diner's foundation. There, footprints. Hers. Same tread, same pattern leading to the ladder and back. She checked her notebook again. Now page 51 had a drawing, a perfectly detailed sketch of the diner from above, and in it, the silhouette of a woman standing under a spiral sky. Elian backed away. The notebook slipped from her hands. She looked up again to the stars. They weren't burning. They were waking, like eyes or mouths, and they were looking at her. Part 3, the spiral below. It started with the humming, not loud, just at the edge of hearing, like a breath beneath the ground or a memory trying to claw its way back into focus. Elian woke with dirt under her nails. Again, the spiral in the sky had tightened. Stars now formed concentric rings, orbiting something invisible, something at the center of it all, just above Merrow. But today, her questions didn't rise skyward. They sank beneath her feet. Her boots traced the dry hills beyond the edge of town. The desert here was unnaturally quiet. Even the wind seemed to avoid it. No insects, no birds, just stone and the constant shimmer of heat that never touched her skin. And then she found it. A crater, perfectly circular, as if punched from the earth by a divine fist. It wasn't on any satellite map. She checked twice. The edges were smooth, too smooth, as though time itself had avoided erosion here. It was shallow, no more than 10 feet deep, and right at its center was a spiral, not drawn, not carved, fossilized. The spiral was made of a chalky bone-white substance that pulsed faintly, like it had veins, like it was thinking. She stepped down into the pit. The humming grew louder. It wasn't sound exactly, more like a pressure behind her eyes, a thought she hadn't had yet, already forming. She touched the fossil, and for a moment, the desert blinked. No, she blinked, and it was night. The stars were below her, forming the same spiral pattern in the crater. Above her, only blackness. No sun, no sky, Just a weightless, awful dark. She fell backward, gasping, and it was day again. She ran, back toward town, and that's when she heard them. The voices, the whispers. As she passed the corner store, two women stood on the porch, rocking gently. "She's waking it up again," one murmured. At the diner, the waitress had stopped pouring coffee. She simply watched her through the glass. "She's waking it up again." Elian kept walking. Faster now. The mechanic stood in the shadow of his shop, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "She's waking it up again." She didn't remember opening the sheriff's door, but she was sitting across from him now. He placed a photo on the desk, black and white, faded, a crater, the same one, and a figure standing at its edge, wearing a jacket, her jacket. Her hair was longer, silver streaks across, her temples, wrinkles around the eyes, but it was her, taken in 1993. The sheriff lit a cigarette but didn't smoke it. "You sure you just got here?" he asked. Elian didn't answer. Her mouth was dry. She reached out to touch the photo, and the edges burned her fingers. Not like heat, like memory. "I don't understand," she whispered. The sheriff shrugged. "We didn't either. Not at first." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean, we?" He didn't respond. Instead, he turned the photo over. On the back, written in a familiar hand. Not the first Elian, maybe not the last. She backed away. "Why are you showing me this?" He didn't meet her eyes. "Because it's always you. Always has been." She left the station in a daze, the words ringing in her ears, not the first, not the last. She walked to the motel. The hallway stretched too long. Doors she hadn't noticed before. Numbers that didn't count up right. 104. 106. 104 again. She opened her room. The notebook was on the bed. It had added a new page. This one drawn in a heavy black spiral. Bleeding. Into the margins. At the center, a single phrase. The spiral opens from below. The air smelled like ozone and metal and something older. She stepped into the bathroom and caught her reflection. Except, it wasn't reflecting her. The woman in the mirror blinked a moment too late. She touched the glass, and the reflection did not. Elian staggered back. Every bulb in the motel flickered, buzzed, died, darkness, then a humming from beneath. She looked down. The floorboards were glowing faintly, tracing the outline of the spiral beneath the town. Alive, waiting. She stepped back to the window and opened the curtain. Outside, in the town square, the people of Merrow had gathered. They weren't looking at the stars, they were facing her window, each one smiling, mouths moving, all in unison. "She's waking it up again." Elian slammed the curtain shut. She turned to the notebook. One last line had appeared beneath the spiral. "You came here from above, but you belong below." She dropped it, but the spiral was still behind her eyes, still humming in her blood. She pressed her hands to her ears, trying to block it out, but she could hear it. A voice, from the crater, from the dark, from something older than stars. And it was saying her name, over and over, calling her back down. Part 4, When Time Runs in Circles. There are 3 roads that leave Merrow. I've tried them all. One leads west into the hills, another snakes north toward the interstate, and the third is little more than a gravel trail disappearing into a canyon. Today I chose the canyon. I drove for 2 hours. The rocks passed in unfamiliar shapes. No cell service, no other vehicles, no wildlife. Just the endless hiss of tires on grit and the slow churn of heat pressing through the windshield. And then, there it was. The gas station. Same one. Same peeling open sign. Same rusted Coke machine out front. The same man behind the register. He didn't blink as I walked in. He just said, "Didn't you try the North Road yesterday?" I left without replying. I didn't remember telling anyone about yesterday, but maybe I had. Maybe I hadn't. Maybe I've done this before. I drove north. The terrain flattened, then climbed. Dead shrubs, bent fences, empty sky, and still, the gas station. The man behind the register met my eyes again. Everyone thinks they're the first to turn around. His words followed me back to the car. I didn't start it, just sat there, watching the spiral above. The stars shifting, turning, drawing something. I checked my watch. Noon, pulled out my recorder and hit record. This is Dr. Elian Rhodes. Local time, exactly 12 p.m. I've attempted to exit the town 3 times, all failed. I'm starting to believe Merrow exists in a self-contained temporal loop. I paused, then stopped the recording. Later back. At the motel, I played it again, but the playback was different. Same tone, same voice. My voice, but it said, "This is Dr. Elian Rhodes. Local time unknown. The 4th night is always when the town begins to hum." I dropped the recorder. I hadn't said that, had I? I opened the window. The motel parking lot was empty, cars rusted over, one still running with no one inside. I walked back into town, needed something real, something solid. The diner was open, bright red booths, a jukebox buzzing softly, but no one was eating. Every person, frozen mid-motion. Forks, paused inches from mouths, coffee halfway to lips, eyes fixed, all on me. I turned slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The waitress moved. She walked with perfect mechanical grace, no blinking, no expression. She reached into her apron and handed me a folded napkin, then walked away without a word. I unfolded. It stopped looking up. My hands trembled outside, the spiral spun tighter in the sky. I stuffed the note in my pocket and ran, back to the motel. The lights were flickering, the walls were humming. I slammed the door, flipped on every light, and stared into the mirror, still me, but not. I looked older, or maybe just tired in a way I didn't understand. I searched the room. Desk drawers, bathroom, closet. On the nightstand sat my notebook. I hadn't brought it out of the car. The last page was new, written in the same handwriting as the star charts. A single sentence. The road out ends where the spiral begins. I stepped back, a crack snaked across the mirror behind me. Not glass, reflection. Like the image couldn't hold. I heard the recorder turn on by itself. It spoke in my voice again. "She's close. She's almost ready." The lights cut out. Darkness. Then the stars pressed through the ceiling like a projection, spiraling above me. I closed my eyes. The hum grew louder. Every hair on my body rose. It was inside me now. Not a sound, but a memory. Not mine, older, far older. The spiral wasn't just in the sky. It was under the town, inside the people, inside me. I screamed, or I think I did. But no sound came out. Only dust, only stars, only that wordless vibration. The voice of something patient, watching, waiting, calling me by name, Elian, Elian, Elian. And I remembered the gas station man's last words as I fled. "You always come back on the 4th night." And tonight was the 4th night. Part 5. The Observers. I followed the notebook. Every page a riddle, every line a whisper. Where the dust smells of salt and ozone, the doorway sleeps behind faded stars. The abandoned hotel stood on the edge of town, 5 stories of peeling, wallpaper and windows that looked inward instead of out. The sign had long since lost its name. Just H.L. in rusted iron. Inside, the lobby was frozen in time. A velvet chair sagged under its own memory. A piano key stuck mid-note. The air was colder, but not dead. Like the building was holding its breath. The notebook's next clue was scrawled diagonally across the page, where the sun never touched, beneath room 237. I climbed the stairs. They creaked like voices. Room 237 was padlocked, but the door wasn't locked from the outside. It was nailed shut from within. The wood tore away easier than it should have. The room was bare. A mattress, a chair, a cracked mirror covered in soot, and in the corner, a seam in the wall, a panel. A breath of air pushed through the gap. Ozone, dust, salt. I pulled it open. Stairs descended into black. A hand-crank light switch flicked on dim bulbs down the narrow stairwell. The descent was steep, claustrophobic. The deeper I went, the quieter the world above became. And then I saw it. A door. Metal. Engraved with a spiral. I pushed. It gave way to an observatory, buried underground. A massive domed room with rusted railings, cracked tile floors and towering equipment too old for even the 1950s. Telescopes bolted to rails, spools of magnetic tape, shelves lined with film canisters labeled only in hash marks and symbols. Dust floated in air that hadn't moved in decades. But something had been here recently, a cup, still warm. I moved to the projector. It hummed awake. I loaded a reel labeled only with a spiral and the number. The screen flickered, a shaky recording of Merrow. Again and again from different angles, different seasons, different years. Always the same woman walking into town. Me. Sometimes with longer hair, sometimes older, once limping. Another time in a coat I didn't recognize. Each version of me paused at the gas station, then walked on. The same spiral in the sky behind every scene, the stars circling tighter. The footage jumped. The sky cracked. Literally. A black tear ran down the film frame. The spiral unwound like a coil, and behind it was something, not space, not night, but a vast, lidless eye, motionless, watching. I stepped back. The projector continued. My voice filled the room, calm, distant, echoing. They never left. They just looked down. The reel ran out. Click, click, click. But my voice kept speaking. The stars were only ever pinholes. They stared through them. I looked up at the dome ceiling. A mural had been painted there once. A celestial map. Now, it was faded, peeling, except for the center, freshly painted. An eye, enormous, veined, alive. I checked the recorder in my pocket. Still off. But the room hummed with something that knew me. I opened another reel. It was only one frame. A timestamp. In the corner, tomorrow. The image? Me. Standing in this room, bleeding from the eyes. Smiling. A spiral branded into my forehead. I dropped the reel. The room shook. Something stirred above, or beneath. I couldn't tell. The notebook's last entry sat on a dusty desk. 4 words, underlined in red. They watch who watches. I closed my eyes, but the feeling didn't leave. That I was being seen. From behind the film, from beneath the spiral, from inside myself. I ran, back up the stairs, through the rotting hotel, out into a night that somehow wasn't darker, but closer. The stars overhead no longer sparkled. They stared. Thousands of eyes. Millions. Twisting. Turning. Following only me. As if I'd seen too much. As if I'd remembered what they tried to bury in loops of time and faces and dust. Merrow wasn't just a town. It was a wound, and I had looked into it, and it had opened. Part 6. Under the spiral sky. I forgot the word for mirror. It came slowly at first. Names, places, moments slipping through my fingers like dust. But today, I stood in front of the diner's window trying to remember what it was called, when glass gives you back your face. And all I saw now was the spiral. It was faint, like a watermark on the sky, in puddles, in the curve of a coffee spoon, reflected back in the eyes of people who no longer blinked. The notebook, my own handwriting, though I never remembered writing it, had a single phrase across its final page. The spiral is not above. It's behind. The locals speak to me less now. When they do, their voices sound like old recordings played backward. Last night, the girl with the star charts looked at me and said, "You're not Elian anymore. You're the second one." The second one. Not a name, a role. As if I had become the echo of something I hadn't yet said. I stopped sleeping. It didn't seem to matter. Time bled forward in strange pulses, like the heartbeat of a thing too large to see. And I began to remember things I hadn't lived. Waking up as a child beneath a spiral sky. Touching the edge of the crater and feeling warmth, not cold. Screaming inside the observatory as the reel ran out and the eye opened behind the stars. Things that hadn't happened. Or hadn't happened yet, but I remembered them. The spiral in my reflection pulsed. It was time. I made my way back to the crater. The desert was silent. Not a single cicada, not a breeze, not a shadow moving that wasn't mine. And yet, I wasn't alone. As I neared the rim, I saw them, the townspeople, all of them, standing in perfect stillness, lined along the edge like stones marking a border, their heads tilted skyward, their mouths closed, their eyes empty mirrors. One step forward and I felt the pull. Not gravity, not fear, recognition. The crater hummed, louder than before, a resonance that vibrated in the marrow of my bones. The spiral in the sky had aligned, perfectly, a curve of impossible geometry now sharp with purpose. And then, it focused. It was not a shape. It was a door or a lens. And behind it, a shape without shape. Color that didn't belong in this world. Sound that bent behind thought. An outline so vast it bled into the fabric of existence and came out the other side looking like me. I fell to my knees, or maybe I rose. I don't remember falling or standing. The people turned their faces toward me. They didn't speak. They listened, because I was speaking. But I had no mouth, no voice, only a signal. Only this. The spiral peeled away every memory, like skin. And beneath it I saw, I had never arrived in Merrow. I had always been here, not walking, not breathing, not living, broadcasting, a beacon wearing flesh. "I remember now," I said, though my voice didn't make sound. It made light and stars. I was always the signal. The townspeople smiled. The spiral opened wider, and I dissolved, not burned, not broken, dissolved, into a pattern, a frequency. My face scattered into constellations. My thoughts became static, and somewhere out there, in the black between stars, the eye turned its gaze toward another town, another name, another Elian who thought they had come by choice. But we never choose to hear the signal. We are the signal, and the sky is listening forever. In Merrow, the stars never stopped watching, and neither should you. If this story left a chill in your spine, there's more waiting. Like, share, and subscribe to Haunted Echoes, where every story opens a new door you wish you never found.